Did you hear that?
I did, yeah. Is there someone with us? Speak to us if you're there.
It's just my kids, they are like poltergeist.
The day they
Um,
destroy the house and smash everything up.
yeah, and they make me feel like I'm going insane. Play So E Welsh Wednesdays with me, Kate Gill-Williams, and Kiri Pritchard-McLean, where once a week we meet up, have a chat about a subject we find interesting, and then at the end try and summarise in Cymraeg. And this week it's my turn to talk about the Eisteddfod. You been to an Eisteddfod, Kiri?
No, to my chagrin.
It's a festival I think it started as a literary festival, and the earliest recorded one was as early as 1176,
Wow.
which is incredible. Obviously not in the same format, but that they kind of have that storytelling, that folklore, and a celebration of all things Welsh, but very much about the Welsh language. So it's focused heavily on poetry, on art, on music, and there's a really brilliant learners section as well, which I'll tell you a little bit of the story, which is the most Quillith thing that's ever happened to me. It's a week-long event, I think. So across the week, there's different competitions, cystadleuaeth, that happen for different kind of categories. So you can enter as a Welsh speaker in first language Welsh. You can enter like a poetry competition, or you can write a short story, and it's judged by panelists, and you go through to certain rounds, and then at the end they kind of announce different winners each day for different categories. But it's really held in high esteem if you've managed to win. Especially what's really coveted is the poetry section, because it comes with quite strict rules, not like it has to be written in iambic pentameter or as strict as that, but there is a certain kind of criteria that meets the Eisteddfod standard. So it's such an accolade if you can win that, and you can become like a member of the bards. So you get to wear this like mad cape, and have this like almost druid, yeah, definitely a druid element to it. Um, just the kind of ceremony and the type of service that they have, it's all a little bit sometimes Wicker Man, if you've seen that, when they do the celebrations. But you know, it's a real dathly of the language and the creativity using the language as well. So there is a huge learner section, and you can enter into different categories. So the one I entered in was the recital category. To turn up one morning, like 8 a.m, which is a ridiculous time to start. And it was on Bededden, so it was so stressful to get there. And I'll come back to like the localities in a moment. So I just rocked up with my daughter because I had no childcare, sweating, thinking I'll just wear like a little dress and be trendy. And then I got there, and it's like everyone was in veil, retired. And I tried to learn it the night before. I was like, I'm just going to fucking wing this. Reading my poem halfway through, I was first up, halfway through, completely forgot everything. Had to get a piece of like shitty folded up paper and read the rest of it out. And then I could just see like the faces were sort of like, yeah, this is not how it's done at all. Anyway, got off, mortified. Like my daughter was 3 at the time, and even her face was, I could see her just going like, it's like, what the fuck is she doing? So what happens then is you get to go through to the next round, and that's the bit that's televised, because across the S4C programming for like, feels like about a lifetime, is just Eisteddfod, Eisteddfod, Eisteddfod. So if you're successful, you get to go through to the main stage, which I've never seen. And that's where they film, and they kind of televise all of those. There is another side, like more of a traditional festival, where they'll have like music tents. So there's a pabell gwerin, which is folk music tent, and you can go and listen to like old traditional Welsh music, because some of the 70s Welsh music is some of the most amazing stuff you'll hear. It's really psychedelic, but not Gwenny psychedelic, really, really cool. So it's kind of nice, and you can get a little Welsh beer and just go and sit and chill in the pabell. Then at night it all kicks off with there's the Maes B, which is where all the Welsh artists perform. So on that same day I did my poem, I just got really pissed afterwards and went to Maes to watch one of the performers. Somehow ended backstage with them all, and he'd just done this massive performance. It was such a big thing for his career and everything. And I just was trying to tell everyone about my story of the poem and tried to recite it again to everyone. Something that's really cool about it is the fact that it does travel around. So it tends to go like North Wales one year, South Wales, sometimes Mid Wales. But like you were saying about Llanbedr, the thinking, I think, is to, you know, bring some revenue, bring people to that area as well, and display all that that's got to offer. It's a real boost to kind of bring in people and families. It's a big family event, so bringing them to those different areas that you might not have kind of seen before. The last one pre-pandemic was, I think it was Llandrwst, and it was just right on this cliff. Like, it's quite an open valley, the Conway Valley, isn't it? And they just got absolutely battered with torrential weather, and then the Maes night had to be called off because they just couldn't run it bechod.
Well, there's lots of iconic bits of history with the Eisteddfod for me, the bits that stand out. So it's not something that I associate it with a certain type of Welsh family, which is probably my father's prejudice being projected onto me, which is sort of more cracaf, sort of cracach, is it? However you pronounce it. Middle class, yeah, sort of, you know, very literate, very engaged cultural families. And we are not that. And we weren't a Welsh speaking house, so it didn't ever feel like somewhere that my family would go to. Much more at home, sort of interfering with chickens at the Anglesey show. That sounds worse than it is. But the bits that stand out to me that I know of being like folklore is the super furry animals were banned from singing in English on the Maes. So, and they were like, that is needlessly divisive, so they turned up on a pink tank, which is, I think, the cover of one of their albums as well, and they drove it through the Maes to get to do their performance, which is so cool. Recent times, I think the Eisteddfod, which hails from the Welsh bardic tradition, which is what my friend Maggie Noggy is a part of as a druid. So yeah, it has its roots in druidry, and yeah, the bards. We should say the main thing is that every year they chair a new bard, which is sort of someone who's like, you are the best at poems in Wales, or the best at literature, and they commission a throne to be made, usually out of wood, by someone sort of, you know, Llior Saer Coed, a local carpenter, and they're incredible things, and some are very traditional and basic, and some are very elaborate, and it just depends on who's made it and what they've used to make it. One of my friends has made one of them.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, very exciting. My joiner, Phil, who I think watches these. Hey, Phil.
Okay.
Hey, Phil, can you come back and finish that shelf for me? Thank you.
I really did pantry, Phil.
He's great. Historically, it's been men who've got it, but in recent times there was a woman. I should check exactly what year, but definitely recent. And the druids, the high druids, which you can be asked to be a part of, who, it's a bit like the Oscars, you know, there's like the Academy who decide who gets stuff. So the druids, when they were sort of crowning or throning this female bard, saying she's the best one, I think one of the very high up druids said, we should take this time to appreciate the men who've supported her to get to this point. Words to that effect. I'm slightly misquoting, but it was really tone deaf, especially as it seemed to be such a symbolic, you know, moving forward for, you know, the Eisteddfod and the traditions. So that's very interesting. And there's been lots of other symbolic moving forward, but they have been met with a bit of opposition. So, for instance, the Eisteddfod was held in Cardiff in the Bay not so long ago. Maybe I should again look up the date, but like about 2018, something like that, maybe 2016. And they made it, because it was right on the bay, they made it free entry, and they had thousands of people coming down, loads of very young people, far more diverse. It tends to be quite white, the Eisteddfod, but Wales isn't, we know that. So this Eisteddfod, which didn't have a monetary barrier, and was somewhere where people pass through, was from all my friends were like, it's the most it's ever represented Wales. It felt like the Wales that we live in, and it felt like modern Wales. So I guess it's a conversation that they're having about, like, well, what do we want to be? Does it feel a bit elite, and does it feel a bit exclusionary to have it where only certain people hear about it or can access it? Or do we throw ourselves into the middle of places and make ourselves more accessible, and then bring people with us into, because the Eisteddfod is a celebration of Welsh culture and the Welsh language.
My husband feels very removed from the Eisteddfod, which is a shame, because he's such a creative person, but when he sees those big massive like gesticulating on stage, and that there's a disconnect. He loves Ken Loach. I think he believes he's grown up in a Ken Loach film, but it's got to represent that, because there's so much of that in Wales as well, but he still loves that creative world. And it's such a shame that if I suggest that we go, it's just like, nah, cacha to it, I'm not going to that. Yeah. And he definitely feels the middle class. I think he doesn't feel good enough. But when you kind of put yourself in that environment, and when I went, it wasn't like that, actually. It was a lot more open hearts, open arms, and more welcoming than that. So it's how they brand it, isn't it? And what they put on.
Where they had mas or mice, dwi'n meddwl, which means out on the mice. So it was basically like a gay cabaret tent. So it was an LGBTQ plus space. So they had drag queens and, like singers and stand-ups and all sorts. And it was basically a queer space at the festival, at the Eisteddfod, rather, calling it a festival. And that is a really great big leap forward. And it's also where loads of exciting stuff will be happening, because it, just shows that, because sometimes the very nature of doing a prelim in a church hall, then getting through to Llwyfan, that's a very sort of measured, the people deciding if you get through have tastes that will be informed by the people that judge them. Whereas the sort of the younger element, or because by its nature, LGBTQ plus tends to be very creative and fringe and forward thinking, they'll be doing all the really exciting stuff, and now there's a space for that on the Eisteddfod, and the nans could wander in there, whilst having a Victoria sponge, and see something amazing that they would never have seen there before.
The word Eisteddfod is, I think it's comprised of like Eisteddfod, like sit, and the word be, as in like to be together. So it's kind of, that's what it's trying to represent, everyone together, sitting together. So that's probably why they've got the chair. But there is it's lovely.
I love a sit down. One of my favorite things. And also, I think Johnny and I will have your husband and I will have a similar thing, in that sometimes we need to take a look at ourselves and try and work out how much of the rejection we're feeling from the environment is imagined and how much of it is real, because some of it is the baggage that we carry from our childhood of feeling excluded from very academic things, very structured things, very Welsh things, and that they can all be different or they can all be the same in the Eisteddfod's case. And some of it is, silly comments that people have made to you that you carry with you for the whole of your life. Like, I think people watching this who don't speak Welsh, especially women, you'll know what it's like when someone makes a comment about your body when you were 9 years old and it's still in your head now. And imagine if it was about a language that you wanted to speak and you felt like was yours, and then someone says something to you and you're like, oh, okay, that's what people see when they look at me, or see when they hear with me. So you kind of remove yourself from it. And I think some of that is the Eisteddfod's job, to reach out and push forward and make sure it's welcoming for those people. And some of it is our job to be like, well, how much are we going to let ourselves be defined by something stupid someone said years ago?
Fi'n I dechrau. So, yn y Eisteddfod, mae'n y cystadleuaeth enw dysgwr y flwyddyn. So mae'n cystadleuaeth yn deal mawr am dysgwr. So pob llynedd mae'n 6 competitors dwi'n meddwl, ac maen nhw'n dŵad o dros y pob man, rhywun yn dŵad o'r Argentina un flwyddyn, ac hefyd, just basically dros y pob man. So ti yn angen mynd trwy llawer y panel i siarad yn Cymraeg, a maen nhw yn medru ofyn ti popeth, anything, and ti angen paratoi ateb, just angen neud rigol, really, just i ateb y cwestiynau. Ac hefyd, ti'n mynd i y maes i siarad yn y Cymraeg, ac ddim yn siŵr os ti'n angen paratoi paragraff neu rhywbeth fel hon, neu just ateb cwestiynau. Ac os ti'n ennill, ti'n cael teitl dysgwr y flwyddyn. Ddim yn siŵr os ti'n cael arian, ond dim ots. So ers ro'n i'n dechrau yn dysgu, dyma fy'n goli, ddim yn barod eto y gwbl, ond nawn ni weld yn y 2 flwyddyn dwi yn really isio ennill hon. Ddim yn gwybod pam, just isio neud o. So.
Does it matter sut ti'n pa mor hir ti'n dysgu? Like, does that matter?
Na, just os ti yn feddwl, ti'n teimlo barod, ti'n medru neud o. Wel, dwi'n pretty sure ddim yn pwysig, na. Ond mi na i edrych ar y requirements, really, ond dwi yn deall just mynediad, a os ti ddim yn digon da, ti ddim yn mynd i lefel nesa.
Okay. Dwi'n meddwl mae'n, dwi'n teimlo mor falch i dod o y gwlad efo event mawr sut dallu pob diwylliant, a dim just dallu, dwi'n meddwl mae Eisteddfod yn bwysig am datblygu lawr y sgiliau yn y arts am pobl ifanc, a mae'n anhygoel bod pobl ifanc sy'n siarad Cymraeg mynd ar y teledu, gwneud, canu neu cerdd dant neu, cerdd, mae'n anhygoel i fi i cael pethau mawr efo llawer o diwylliant, a am rŵan dwi'n cyffrous iawn i gweld sut y Eisteddfod dechrau symud efo y amseriau, a llawer o pobl hoio, gwneud weithio ar y llwyfan, a mae'n hyfryd i clywed amdan sîn am dysgwr, and dwi'n gobeithio un dydd Eisteddfod dim yn cael barriers i pobl mynd a mwynhau diwylliant.
As the Eisteddfod, and one day I really, really hope you do a Welsh comedy tent.
Oh yeah, dwi'n wrth y modd efo y swnniad o gwneud stand-up, yn Gymraeg, ond I don't know, dwi'n teimlo fel risg enfawr am fi. Yeah, I didn't put my brother's Bane mask on for the whole of it.
Why has he got a Bane mask?
Because he's 40 and doesn't have a girlfriend.
Oh well. So that's probably why.
I think. Mystery solved!
I